My name is Claire Pring and I am a dance specialist, and the area I work in most of all is primary school education and particularly cross-curricular learning, so that's my little niche. And what I'd really like to talk to you about today is the difference between dance education and dance training. I think when most people are thinking about dancers, they tend to think about dancers as performers, understandably. And in order to get high quality performance, dancers are trained. And this is our typical image of the line of ballet dancers standing at the bar, or the dance teacher standing at the front teaching a sequence and the dancers in the class learning it, repeating it with precision and accuracy. And that's fantastic for people who are going to be performers. That is their required set of skills. To me, when I see people delivering that way, with the teacher at the front showing the moves and the children replicating them, I'm almost kind of crying out, what then? What else are they going to do with it? Because I find myself asking them, well, what are they learning? What are they actually learning? It seems to me that if I teach the moves to the students and all they do is replicate them back, it's a little bit like copying off the board. I can do it, but I'm really not quite engaging with it. Now, if I'm teaching them some moves and then they're going to be doing something with those moves, they're going to be rearranging them, they're going to be using them as a springboard to take them on somewhere else, or a safety net for those children that are not very confident, that's fine. I often do that if I'm teaching other dance styles. I will teach them one or two moves that are indicative of that style, that will give them the flavour and the feel of it, but then using ideas, imaginations, looking at video, looking at pictures, we will then go off and work those ideas and make them our own. We'll do something original, and that way we're going to have ownership over those moves. And that for me is the difference between teaching through training and educating. I think this begs the question of, well, what should be included in a good dance lesson? If I'm saying it's about the children and their moves, well, if I was a non-specialist, I would straight away be thinking, well, that's fine, Claire, but how? How do I do that? Because I think there's a real safety net about teaching some set moves. It feels like they've got something concrete and very clear. But it's much easier if you work it the other way and you throw it out to them. So let me explain how I do it. I'm not saying this is the only way of doing it. This is just how I do it. So the process I go through if I am giving a theme or a topic is do that typical mind map to get all my ideas down of what it might include. And then for each idea thread that I've got going off that mind map, I ask myself a question, and it's an either or question. So it's either what shape does it make, or what does it do? So the shapes will obviously give me shape-based stuff, and what does it do will give me some actions. And the real trick here is being able to state the obvious in the answer. So if I was doing something, I do Charlie and the Chocolate Factory very often, it's one of my favourites. So we often talk about the gates to Mr. Wonka's factory. Well, what shape do they make? Well, gates are usually quite wide and flat, so quite often I'll get them to work in groups to create the shape of the gates. And we might talk about, are they ornate? Are they fancy? How high are they? Are they to protect people, to stop them entering into the factory? All those sorts of questions. And the children will work in their groups and then we'll make their shapes. And then I will say to them, but what do gates do? Well, gates open. So then we've got the question of, well, the shape that they've got, their gate shape, how are we going to make that open? Is it going to swing open, slide open? Is it going to drop down into the floor? Is it going to dissolve away in some magical way? This is Mr. Wonka's factory after all. So how would they do that? And this is all about asking them the questions. So they will then not only be the performers of the work, but they're also the choreographers. They're also analysing the ideas as they go along. They're interpreting it. They're thinking how this will look to the audience. So that sense of the experience that what they are doing is much more holistic. And the fact that they are owning it, it will make it their move. It is their dance lesson, and it takes an awful lot of pressure off you, because you just say, okay, starting positions, let's get into our gait shapes. Off they go. You haven't got to remember the gait shapes. That's their job to do that. And another really important aspect of this for the primary classroom is about inclusion. So when I work with the children, and the way I ask teachers when I do inset and so on to work with the children, is to ask questions. And the question usually starts off with, can you find a way? So going back to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, can you find a way of making a gates? Now, if I'm teaching a very set sequence of set phrase and movements, not all children are going to be able to do that because of their different physicalities. Not all children will pick it up so easily, and that's a real way of highlighting the kids that are struggling with it. And there's nothing more off-putting than feeling that everybody else in this is better than you are. Whereas if you're working in this much more kind of collaborative, much more creative way, there's so many different ways of making a gate shape that, you know, it's wonderful. And it's great. We can say to the children, oh, let's have a look at that group. Let's see how they did it. How did they make theirs open? So we're getting the language in there as well. We're looking at it dissolving or passing or travelling through. They might talk about it exploding out or it melting away. So we get all those different quality kind of words in there. And that's going to impact upon all those other lessons that we want to really use those kind of language skills in. And these open-ended tasks, they typically differentiate themselves beautifully. So I usually start off with something really simple, okay? So you're going to find a way of making some gates. That would be the first statement. And then I might prompt in with different groups, or if the whole class are looking ready for a bit more, some extra layers to it. So it might be, okay, so really think about how high your gates are going to be. So think about what levels you're going to use. And then maybe if we want to add more, okay, can we make these gates a little bit more ornate? How can we make them fancier? This is Mr. Wonka's factory. I think he would go for something quite elaborate, don't you? So we might look at the text around that section of the book and look at some of the words in there and filter those in. So we're just going to start simple and then just add layers. The great thing about this is children will often add those layers in themselves. Oh, we could do this. Oh, what about that? And they will give you their rationale back to you about why they did it that way. And they've really embraced that learning. They've embodied it. They own it. It's theirs. It's their move. I think whilst we had the pandemic situation going on with all the home learning that involved, an awful lot of people shifted towards delivering in this more training-based mode. So they were standing at the front with a kind of copy me aspect to the lesson. And I can see why people did that. We didn't have an awful lot of time to plan. People were just trying to get stuff out there awfully quickly. And it feels like quite a shortcut way of engaging children. So it had its place there. We're not knocking it. All things have their place. It's just about balance, isn't it? But now we're back in the classroom. The opportunity to engage with others, to work together, to collaborate, to share ideas, to review, all of that doesn't happen in a copy me kind of lesson. Well, we really need to address that now, and we really need to help them build that all-round skills, the sense of artistry that comes in there. So the more you can do the exploratory, the highly engaging, the fun stuff where they are joining together, where they're creating, that is so needed right now. I really hope you agree with me, and I really want to say thank you for listening, and please feel free to contact me if there's any way that I can support your work in schools.